and my message tonight is entitled, What Happened After God's Funeral? If it is possible to believe that God doesn't exist, I'm really not sure that it is possible to do that. It is so significant that I do not believe it is logically possible to be an atheist and live consistently. At least I find it inevitable. The logical outworking of a non-existent God has horrendous implications. Let me just take you through tonight with three main conclusions. If God doesn't exist, what choices may I then make? If God doesn't exist, what choices am I forced to make? And you tell me at the end of it whether you can live logically having made those choices. The first choice you're forced to make, if there is no God, is you'll be forced to mistake man to be God. Isn't it true that if God is dead, Malcolm Muggeridge said it, if God is dead, somebody is going to have to take his place. Either the dominating autocratic ruler in a totalitarian regime, or the drive for pleasure where all parameters are removed and we choose the angles at which we want to fall. So if God is dead, somebody has to take his place, and it ends up being man. After all, we are not going to take guinea pigs to be gods. We're going to have to become gods of our own. Go back to the Garden of Eden, because I believe humanism is the second oldest religion in the world. Man endeavoring to live in Eden without the boundaries set by God. That's exactly what Eve wanted to do. She wanted to live in Eden without the boundaries of God. And Adam ended up in the same way. Rather than God being the measure of all things, they wanted themselves to be the measure of all things. Don't you remember? Satan says to Eve, the reason he's asked you not to do this, because in the day that you do it, you will become as God. What he's really saying is, why do you want God to be God? Why don't you become the God of God? Or certainly become the God of your own destiny. And the exemplary setting there was that she made her choice as he made his choice to overrule the mandates of God and play God and become self-determining. So she goes out and commits that sin, and ultimately when God meets up with both of them, they're hiding from him, and the fall has taken place, and now they're literally on the run as they are hiding from him. What happens after that? Children come into this home, and before long murder is in the household. When you saw the darkness of death in the Garden of Eden, you began to see the darkness of death fall over the whole world. Man, in endeavoring to be God, ended up crucifying himself. Choice number one, you have to mistake man for God. Choice number two, you will have to take your body to be your soul. If there is no God, there is no soulishness. If there is no soulishness, all that is left is the material. And if the material is all that you have to take the body to be the ultimate and the eternal. You have to take the body to be the ultimate and the eternal. Your body becomes your soul. If your body becomes your soul, very systematically, I'll tell you what will happen. We will come to a day where our emotions are ultimately smothered, and we will be told that every emotional response depends entirely upon what you want it to be. But there's nothing sublime out there. It's only the gland secreting juices which give you a feeling which some people say is the feeling of sublimity. Although there is no such thing as nobility, it's only in the glands. There's no such thing as shamefulness, it's only in the glands, and it's all in the secretions. Nobility and shamefulness are not realities out there, it's all in the body within itself. C.S. Lewis says, if I believe these men, they tell me mathematics is real, therefore my brain is real. Food is real, therefore my stomach is real. But they tell me my emotions have nothing whatsoever to do with reality. They're going to produce a generation of men with brains, men with stomachs, men without chests, no heart. And if God is dead, you have to take the body to be the soul. And you will end up killing feelings of nobility and shame. That's why when you see a man binding his enemy's wounds, you see something soulish about him. That's why when you see a helpless orphan rescued, you see something soulish about the rescue. That's why when we see something noble, we see something soulish about it. It is not merely flesh and blood and bones and veins. There's something of a spirit in all of that. But if God is dead, the body has to be taken to be the soul. And I don't know how one can live with that. The only way one can live with it then is to live with a constant sense of contradiction. G.K. Chesterton says this: the new rebel is a skeptic and will not entirely trust anything. He has no loyalty, therefore he can never be a real revolutionist. The fact that he doubts everything gets in the way when he wants to denounce anything. For all denunciation implies a moral doctrine of some kind, and the modern revolutionist doubts not only the institution he denounces, but the doctrine by which he denounces it. So he writes one book complaining that imperial oppression insults the purity of women. Then he writes another book, a novel, in which he insults it himself. He curses the Sultan because Christian girls lose their virginity, then curses Mrs. Grundy because they keep it. As a politician, he cries out that war is a waste of life, and as a philosopher that all life is a waste of time. A Russian pessimist will denounce a policeman for killing a peasant, then prove by the highest philosophical principles that the peasant ought to have killed himself. A man denounces marriage as a lie, then denounces aristocratic profligates for treating it as a lie. He calls the flag a bauble, then blames the oppressors of Poland or Ireland because they take away that bauble. Here's the winner. The man of this school goes to a political meeting first, where he complains that savages are treated as if they are beasts. Then he takes his hat and umbrella and goes to a scientific meeting where he proves that they practically are beasts. In short, the modern revolutionist, being an infinite skeptic, is always engaged in undermining his own minds. In his book on politics, he attacks men for trampling on morality. In his book on ethics, he attacks morality for trampling on men. Therefore, the modern man in revolt has become practically useless for all purposes of revolt. By rebelling against everything, he has lost his right to rebel against anything. Now, wasn't it worth coming just to hear that? God is dead, you have to take man to be God. If God is dead, you have to take the body to be the soul. And lastly, if God is dead, you have to take time to be eternity. There is no tomorrow. The worms will devour your body, and you commit your body to the great perhaps. All right? If there is no God, then time has to become eternity. So if you see a 5-year-old killed in a tragic accident, it is no more meaningful a fact than a 95-year-old who has died a very natural death, because death is the end of everything. There is no eternity. Life becomes completely senseless. Time becomes eternity. It is a dangerous thing to play God. You relieve God of a very solemn responsibility and take it upon yourself. What's your choice tonight? Is it going to be Christ or Nietzsche?